Borderlands. The equally unique and tiresome franchise has had a variety of games now. They've had some pretty big hits, but recently they've had a lot more misses. I myself am a fan of the games. I've been playing them since the first one back in 2009, which was 15 years ago. I love the first two games and really enjoyed Tales from the Borderlands as well. However, I've mostly grown out of the type of humor they use and really only continue to play them for the fun gameplay, which carries them pretty heavily. But what would happen if the story was the main focus of a Borderlands property? You wouldn't be able to rely on the gameplay in something like a movie. Well, luckily enough, we just got the first ever Borderlands movie, so we could see how strong the storytelling of this world really is. And from the look of things, it's not very promising. So, as you've likely heard, the Borderlands movie is considered to be one of the worst movies of the year, and has unfortunately ruined the streak of good video game projects, and returned us to the era of video game adaptations that were created just because. Lots of people are giving criticism, and even some dedicated fans had a lot of negative things to say, and the CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford, took those criticisms very seriously, maybe a little too seriously, and the reviews weren't the only thing in the negatives. The movie apparently only made $31 million with an estimated $120 million budget, and on top of that, the film just came out on digital only 21 days after it released in theaters. Clearly, this film doesn't have a lot of positive things going for it. So now, I'm going to give my opinion on the film, and I'm going to answer the question. Is Borderlands really that? Yes, it's really bad. Borderlands begins with a bunch of nonsense right from the start. We get some bland narration from Lilith, who's talking about Iridian artifacts and aliens and a prophecy that involves Tiny Tina, which isn't a thing in the games. And all this is a lot to just throw at the audience from the very beginning. And if you think the exposition is going to end here, you're in for a rough time. Honestly, you could just rename this Exposition Lands with the amount of unnatural dialogue, explanations for things that don't matter, and reciting of simple actions. Here's a good example from this beginning segment. Roland is breaking out Tina from this space prison for some reason, I don't know, I forgot, but this should probably just be a simple bit of dialogue and then some action, right? We could see everything that's happening here. There shouldn't be any reason to call attention to something in the sequence, right? Nope. They gotta point out to you the very obvious thing that just happened right in front of your eyes. After the breakout sequence filled with boring action and awful comedy, we go to Promethea, which looks like this in the game, so naturally for the movie they wanted it to look like Gotham City for some reason. This looks like the most generic, bland, sci-fi-ish landscape, and so it's appropriate that we get an introduction to Lilith, who is involved with many other generic actions. She sits down for a drink in a secluded bar, punches a guy for bothering her, shoots the other guys, does a cool hair flip. Then there's a guy who's slow clapping off in the corner who then gives her a shady job. This is a scene you would write in like a very rough draft of a script, not the finished one. So now she has to go to Pandora, naturally followed by some more exposition and awful narration along the way. And then we see good old Marcus. Now Marcus here is actually an okay character. He seems pretty close to his video game counterpart, and this is actually a great opportunity for some natural exposition. Marcus takes Lilith on the bus, and he starts playing a commercial where he's explaining the vaults and the legends about how to open them. This would be a perfect way to naturally tell the audience those things, and then at the end Lilith can say something like, yeah, I already know all this. So that would explain how she knows stuff like that, and it shows that she knows something about Pandora already. But sadly, that's not what happens. We just get more of the dried narration, so whatever. After she gets off the bus, we meet the absolutely hilarious and totally necessary character of Claptrap.
You can call me Claptrap.
I don't know why Claptrap has a role in the story. He doesn't serve the plot in really any way. I guess he's used to, once again, dump information onto the audience later in the movie, but you could have just had a little holo recording thing for that. Aside from that moment, he's just the comedic relief. And unfortunately, that doesn't really work when he isn't funny.
Scanning, 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 scanning.
So yeah, he's just here now. He probably would have worked better in a smaller role like Marcus or Moxxi, or even just a quick little cameo, but sadly we just have to deal with him now. And something else we just have to deal with is the atrocious CGI. Lilith and Claptrap find Tina, whatever, doesn't matter, and then they start getting attacked by Nox, and this entire sequence looks horrendous. Where did the $120 million go? because it clearly didn't go towards any of this. When the characters are sliding down this falling car and are already completely CG, why not just make this entire film animated at that point? Why did they think it was a good idea to turn a stylized video game that has a very unique cel-shaded art style that is synonymous with the franchise into this Looney Tunes movie? Yeah, it's ugly, and it does not get any better. It was also at this point in the movie where I started to realize that these protagonists are all very one-note characters. Claptrap is silly, Tina's wacky, Roland is doing his job, for whatever reason. Knox wants to capture Tina. They have no personalities or deeper motivations, and that can work in the video games because most characters that are one note like that don't have major roles in the story. And I guess it works for Krieg, who's here too, but like, that's his entire purpose, is to be the big strong guy. He says his lines from the games and attacks people, and that's all that's needed. I would expect a little more out of the main protagonists and one of the major antagonists, and I guess there's a little bit of personality behind Lilith because she has her whole mom plotline, but you'll see later on that that isn't a very compelling part of the story. Okay, next, they get pissed on, they go to Sanctuary, and then they meet Tanis, who has some more very natural sounding dialogue.
Now that we have Tina and the first key, I want to show you this. This is a mining journal left behind by a corporate bureaucrat.
Then they meet Moxxi, she gives exposition, they go in the sewers. More exposition, and a relevant scene of the gang looking at a flower, which Claptrap steps on because funny.
Who's the best? I'm the best.
Yeah, there's not much to say during this middle chunk, and I'm trying to write this all down quickly in my script because the events of this movie are rapidly leaking out of my brain. I guess this action scene in the sewer is something to talk about. It's a scene, and there is action, but it's incredibly boring action. It's just a bunch of people shooting their guns with bottomless magazines for like 10 minutes, and there's no momentum, or tension, or life. It's just people shooting guns and people getting shot. I guess the one thing that has some life to it is this moment where Roland is seemingly going to sacrifice himself, and this gives me something to talk about because I can easily explain why it works better in the original context. So in Borderlands 2, you meet Tina early on in the game, and you spend the majority of the story listening to characters like her and Roland. And while they don't have too many direct interactions from what I can remember, I know that they at least had a slightly believable friendship. So later on in the game, when Roland is killed, and actually stays dead, everyone's sad. Tina takes this especially hard, and that's expanded upon in the Dragon Keep DLC, where you find out that Tina is trying to play this D&D style game with her friends because she's trying to push aside the grief and emptiness she still feels about Roland. Again, their connection to one another wasn't that strong, but there's something to grab onto here on an emotional level. In the movie, during this sewer sequence, everyone gets on an elevator and Roland stays behind to hold off the psychos, and Tina asks for him to stay and gets worried. So naturally, if you played the game, you would expect him to sacrifice himself here, but he just kills all the psychos and there are no consequences. And even if he did die, it wouldn't really matter because we've barely seen Tina and Roland interact in a natural situation. There isn't really a reason to believe that they would be close enough to care about one another when they've only known each other for like a couple days, probably. I'm apparently expecting too much from this storytelling because it's clearly not very consistent. After the gang escapes, Lilith gets tracked by Atlas, and he says some stuff that I don't remember because it was so lifelessly conveyed. But Tina sees that conversation and is upset and immediately throws a grenade at Lilith. They were like slightly acting like friends in earlier scenes, and now she just tries to blow her up after a single conversation. Yeah, these characters are something. So they all leave Lilith behind. She goes to her childhood home because the plot needs that to happen, and she watches another unoriginal scene where this mother talks to her daughter and tells her how special she is and how she misses her, and it's so inspiring that Cate Blanchett gives one of her best performances to date.
I wish I could hold you one last time.
She doesn't give a fuck. Look at her. She's like, oh damn. Anyway, then we finally, thankfully, get to the climax of the movie where the gang is about to open the vault. They thought Tina was the key to the vault, but she isn't, and Atlas catches up with them and is about to capture Tina again, but luckily, Roland shows up from outer space in this god-awful moment. Then Atlas says to kill them all, because he's generic villain number 7425. But then, Knox, out of literally nowhere, says, wait, don't shoot them, I like them now. And then Atlas kills her, and then Lilith shows up. Yay! She's the real key to the vault, and she's gonna open it. But Tina is unrealistically emotional again, even more so now since she just threw a fucking grenade at Lilith. But Lilith uses the key, and she's fine because she gets her siren powers. Whoa, she's the Firehawk, just like in the game, except now she looks horrific. Man, that's awful. Looks so fucking ugly. She's not real. Just make it animated. It's just her head. It's literally just her head. Look at that. Everything else is fake. Oh my god. And then they shoot more guns and fight people. And Lilith blows stuff up and has 1 or 2 fake out deaths. And then Atlas takes Tina hostage so they can go in the vault. And so they do. And what riches are waiting in the vault? There aren't any. It's really lackluster, like the first game. And there's a monster that takes Atlas, and then they leave. Then of course we have to go back to Sanctuary and get our little Ewok celebration to fully prove that this film is a bland, lifeless story that has nothing unique to offer whatsoever. But thankfully we've reached the end. Sorry, I guess, if I skipped through the ending too fast for you, but trust me, there's nothing here. This film is monotonous and lackluster, and there's very little to gain from this movie in terms of entertainment. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. Now that's the same score I gave to the previous worst movie of the year, Madame Web. And I definitely think Madame Web is better because at least it was funny bad. But I don't think Borderlands is completely, utterly worthless. Like, I can kind of see something of a story underneath the garbage, like with the Lilith stuff maybe, but that is drastically overshadowed. And while I'm talking about what's underneath, now feels like a good time to mention the final thing I'll be talking about in this video, and that is the issue of the screenplay. So reportedly, the original script was written by Craig Mason, who has written scripts for series such as Chernobyl and The Last of Us. But at some point, due to possible interference from the director Eli Roth and a lot of reshoots and rewrites, Craig decided he didn't want his name attached to the movie anymore. He supposedly used the fake name of Joe Crombie to escape the writer's credit, but he later came out and said that that wasn't his pseudonym and he wasn't involved with the movie at all. However, if you search for Joe Crombie, he's only shown to have 1 writing credit, and that's on Borderlands. So it feels like this Joe Crombie isn't a real guy. But I'm not really looking to report on if all this is true or not. I'm simply bringing this up because there was clearly a lot of interference and meddling with this movie. So it's kind of obvious why it didn't turn out very good in the end. In terms of improvements, I feel like they could have done a few big things differently. For one, making the movie R-rated and having more gore and violence, similar to the video games, might have helped to make the action scenes a little bit more engaging. But I guess the producers thought you can never have an R-rated action film with a lot of gore and violence and also have it be massively successful. That would just never work. And another thing that might have improved the film is having it maybe not be live action. The credits of the movie use an art style that's similar to the games. Clearly they wanted to pay homage to that art style somehow, so why didn't they just make an animated movie? Especially since, again, most of it was already animated. Oh well, I guess you couldn't possibly make an animated series based on a video game. Nobody would bother to watch something like that. Those changes might have been nice, but unfortunately we're stuck with this. Maybe they'll make some big changes in the sequel. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, this shit ain't getting a sequel. Well, at this point, all we can hope for is that the recently announced Borderlands 4 will be good. I think that'll do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this video was more entertaining than Borderlands. That'd be really embarrassing if it wasn't. If you enjoyed this, I hope you'll check out some of my other videos and stick around for more. See you around.